Hello everybody and welcome back to the wonderful Advent calendar from Jolly Love with the story A Husband for Christmas. Today we're at day 19. Home for the holidays. Early in the morning, the three of them travelled back to Malfoy Manor, where Harry followed Scorpius, who was far too excited to have Harry back in his life. Not that Harry would complain, but he still remembered what the child had told him last night. He wanted Harry to be his dad. And the way Draco was so careful right now, he seemed so hurt. The ministry was coming and taking his house. Of course he was hurt. However, it didn't seem as if it was the full reason. While Draco was working in the living room and walked from parlour to parlour, picking little things that were important to him, he stopped and walked back to Scorpius' room. Having seen his son so broken and hopeless yesterday had destroyed his heart. The way Harry had been there for him, it was so natural. He really wanted it to be natural, Harry being part of his family. However, that was never going to happen, right? It was just a fantasy. In front of Scorp's room, he stopped and saw Harry by a table looking over a book when Scorpius walked up next to him.
"Mother made this for me."
Harry turned to look at him and smiled softly.
"It's beautiful. The letter's right."
Nodding, Scorpius took out one of the letters.
"She said she'd write one for every birthday she's going to miss. This one I got for my last birthday." "You want me to read it?"
Harry asked and accepted a parchment. Scorpius nodded.
"As my next dad, you're supposed to know what you're falling into,"
he said, as if it was clear that Draco was going to marry him, and Harry smiled weakly. He placed an arm around Draco's son and made him sit down on a chair.
"Listen, Scorpius. You can't choose what makes your father happy, and we can't just get married." "Well, that's exactly what he told me. He just wants this thing so then I'm okay. I'm only happy if you're my other dad."
Scorpius crossed his arms while Draco frowned at the situation.
"Scorpius, have you heard about the story of a professor in Hogwarts? It's an older story, so you might have already heard about it."
And Scorpius shrugged his shoulder. Harry explained it a little more detailed.
"It's about a girl who got married in the summer after her last year of Hogwarts."
Shaking his head, Scorpius showed that he didn't know it. Draco frowned as well, leaning at the wall, deciding to listen to the story as well. Harry smiled at the child and nodded.
"There once was a professor hearing about this girl getting married next summer. He couldn't believe it, since it was so early, and he asked the girl whether or not her husband made her happy. She said yes."
Scorpius guessed and grinned over the story. Chuckling, Harry shook his head.
"The story's not that short. Her husband thought that surely she'd say yes. He knew his wife, and she had always looked happy to be with him, and she never told him they should change something and talk about the relationship problem."
Scorpius smirked.
"So she said no?"
He assumed, and Harry shrugged his shoulders.
"She said no,"
he confirmed.
"Her husband was really confused, as you could imagine. Well, she continued. She told the professor that her husband did make her happy, since her happiness only depended on her, and not another person. Since everything constantly changes in one's life, the only true way of finding happiness is to find it in yourself." "That's stupid."
Scorpius shook his head.
"Scorpius, you are responsible for your own happiness,"
Harry said softly and smiled.
"I don't want to be the source of this, since—"
Draco frowned. It looked as if Harry had quite some problem containing his emotions. Scorpius didn't seem to notice, but Draco found Harry trembling slightly. What was going on? As fast as Harry had seemingly lost control, he was back to the old savior again, and he continued quickly.
"Since life can end so early. If I die, then the source of your happiness dies, and I really don't want that to happen."
Scorpius shook his head.
"I don't like that story. I don't think it's even happened."
He rolled his eyes while Harry chuckled.
"Actually, the girl was my wife, Ginny. She told Professor Flitwick, who was a charms professor, that she didn't need me to be happy as my wife."
He had this sad smile on his lips. This time, Draco was sure that Scorpius had seen it. Frowning, Scorpius looked at the letter which Harry had placed on the desk and then back at Harry.
"You needed her for your happiness."
The incredible sad expression almost made Draco's heart break. How long ago had his wife died? It seemed to have happened last week, judging by his expression. Maybe this was why he hadn't told Draco to get over Astoria's death. He was still mourning as well.
Sometimes. It's getting better, though.
Harry smiled and carefully tucked a loose hair strain behind Scorpius' ear.
What I'm trying to teach you here, Scorpius, is that you don't need me to be happy. If you choose happiness, you can be happy.
But I'm nothing.
Scorpius looked at the floor sadly. How was there so much pain in this house? Draco suppressed a sigh and was just about to walk into the room when Harry placed his hand on Draco's son's shoulder.
Do you know the myth around your name, Scorpius?
Harry asked with a small smile.
I'm named after a star, yes. Everyone in my family is.
Draco's son rolled his eyes and didn't even seem slightly impressed. Harry laughed and shook his head. He performed a quick magic spell and Scorpius' whole room turned into the night sky. It was quite impressive, and Draco had to stop himself from walking into the room and staring at the beauty of it all. Harry then turned to the boy and pointed at his constellation.
Did you know that the Scorpion defeated Orion, the mighty hunter, with a sting? The Greek gods decided to give both of them a final resting place in the stars, but since they hated each other, they decided to place them on opposite sides of the night sky, so you can never see them together. In July, Scorpion will reign over the night sky, and Orion is banned to the underworld. But in January, Orion has fought the Scorpion of the sky to at least be the Lord of the Stars for a few nights.
Scorpius stared at Harry with wide eyes.
Well, I didn't know.
You, Scorpius, can do everything if you choose to. You're powerful, amazing, and, your namesake defeated a god.
Harry smirked.
And did you know that Orion in some stories actually has 3 dads?
Laughing, Scorpius shook his head.
As if.
Harry chuckled.
No, really. In some translations, it says that Orion's the son of Poseidon, Zeus, and either Hermes or Ares. The texts aren't sure.
Scorpius smirked.
How much do you want to bet that my parents talked about naming me Scorpius Orion Malfoy?
Laughing softly, Harry shook his head.
I don't think the stars would have been happy with this decision.
He motioned towards the books.
I assume you want to keep it.
Yes.
Then put it into the trunk, Scorpius. We'll need to go through all other things here as well, and probably before your father comes in here to check up on you.
Scorpius giggled and rushed away. Harry smirked, getting up, and turned to Draco's son. Suddenly stopped and made eye contact with Draco through the slightly ajar door. Smiling softly, Draco put his finger over his lips, showing him that he wouldn't say a word. And once Harry nodded quickly, he turned and walked into his own room, checking for more stuff. His son was clearly doing fine with Harry around, and Harry seemed to have it all handled. To be continued.